So the Mariners have a couple different holes. And I think I'm going to start with this. The first misconception about what the Mariners need this offseason is the idea that they need to add offense, which is surprising. We're a decade and a half, it feels like, into the Mariners going into every offseason needing to add offense. I think some people started to acknowledge last year that T-Mobile Park suppresses counting stats for offenses. And the Mariners had, by WRC Plus, the third best offense in baseball last year. The Mariners, frankly, do not need to add offense. And sure, they have holes. Third base right now, if it's Ben Williamson, that's a hole. But last year, the trade they made for Eugenio Suarez was not great offensively as a Mariner. He obviously hits one of the most iconic balls in the history of the Mariners franchise. But overall, he struggled at the plate. Third base was not a place you got a ton of contributions from in 2025. And the Mariners still had one of the league's best offenses. But what they also had is one of the league's worst defenses. And this is not getting enough pub, in my opinion. There's not enough conversation about how bad the Mariners' defense was. And the middle infield was arguably one of the worst in baseball, maybe the worst in baseball. Between the contributions from J.P. Crawford, obviously you get a little bit of Dylan Moore. You get some, there's a cavalcade of people, including Cole Young, who we'll talk about in a little bit. So this offseason, there's been a lot of focus. Do you go, the Mariners, they got their top target, they got Josh Naylor. After that, who do you go after? People think there are holes at second base and third base. They have to be filled. I've heard people say the Mariners have to get two more bats. They have to get two more bats before the end of this offseason. Frankly, not true. They have a very good offense. And they have a reason to believe that Victor Robles will be healthy, which will improve the defense, by the way, and becomes a right-handed bat in a team that's maybe too heavily left-handed, especially on the infield, and Robles doesn't solve that, obviously. And also maybe expects bounce-back years from guys like Luke Raley, who had a tough year last year with a bunch of injuries, but was pretty good in 2024. So I don't think the Mariners need offense explicitly. I certainly don't think that they need two bats. In fact, I would say there's maybe nobody that's available in free agency that isn't going to cost $100 million plus that I would rather have at second base than Cole Young. I think Cole Young is going to be a very good hitter. I think he has a bunch of underlying metrics that were promising last year. I think, you expect the guy that once there's some tape on him and he's in the longest season of his career, yeah, he tapered off at the end of the season. But at a point, he had some peripheral numbers that were very impressive among some of the league's best hitters at a point, and he tapered off. And maybe he regressed to the mean, but there's a bunch of metrics that support him being an actually good major league player. So for me personally, I would be totally okay with the Mariners going into 2026 with Cole Young as the expected starter long-term at second base. But there's been persistent conversation. Brendan Rodgers, Ketel Marte, bring those guys, trade for Ketel Marte. And Marte, by the way, one of the best hitters in baseball the last several years. And a guy who is not Brendan Rodgers, by the way. Oh my God. Brendan Donovan. Jesus. This is my second. If you didn't see, I recorded a Damon Williams related episode earlier, and I'm trying to get ready for my trip to Tulsa. By the way, if you love anyone in Tulsa, if you know anyone in Tulsa, send them my way. I'll be at Bricktown Comedy Club Tulsa all weekend, headlining. A couple buddies there with me. So yeah, they want people to go. They want the Mariners to go trade for Brendan Donovan, to go trade for Ketel Marte. And I like both those guys fine. I am not prepared for the Mariners, frankly, to spend what it will take to basically get guys who I think there's a 25% chance that Cole Young is as good or better than one of those guys this year. And I also think none of those guys, Donovan being the exception, neither of those guys are like real sexy options at third base. Ketel Marte probably can't play third base long term. He's moving down the defensive spectrum, and I don't know that he's got the ability to play third base. Donovan could certainly slot in at third base, would allow you to keep playing Cole Young at second base, but not incredibly exciting. But there is a guy that I like a lot, a guy who I think makes a ton of sense for the Mariners. In fact, I'd go so far as to say this man is a perfect fit for what the Mariners need, and his name is Willi Castro. Willi Castro played all but a half a season of his career with the Minnesota Twins. He got traded to the Cubs last year, and he had an injury-plagued season in 2025. And if a guy who is a utility infielder who had an injury-plagued season the year before the Mariners acquired him gives you Jorge Polanco PTSD, I understand that. But we're talking about a guy. You're talking about Ketel Marte. The trade package that people expect is like George Kirby plus, Bryce Miller plus. To acquire Brendan Donovan, it's Cade Anderson plus. I don't want to give up those guys for two guys who are, and Marte's very good. He's been a very good hitter. But I do have concerns about him coming to Seattle and struggling in a similar way to Eugenio Suarez coming back to Seattle. And by the way, I've always liked Marte. I liked Marte as a prospect. I thought I was not happy. I will say Mitch Haniger in his early seasons in Seattle did a lot to assuage my dislike of the trade, but I liked Ketel Marte a lot more than I liked Mitch Haniger. I was not thrilled about that trade. It seemed to me like trading a long-term asset for guys who were like for a guy who's like a short-term quad A guy. That's what it ended up being. And Haniger had some very good seasons in Seattle, but so let's talk about these three guys compared to each other. I guess that's the place that we should start. In 2025, Willi Castro was easily the worst of these three players. And if you're watching, you can see on the screen, 2025, he had 0.6 wins above replacement. He had a 92 WRC plus. Brendan Donovan was worth 2.9 wins above replacement. Ketel Marte was worth 4.6 wins above replacement. Ketel Marte had a great 145 WRC plus, and Brendan Donovan had a very good 119 WRC plus. However, in the previous seasons, it was a little bit closer. Ketel Marte was worth 10.7 wins above replacement from 2003 to 2023 to 2024. And Willi Castro had 5.4 wins above replacement. Brendan Donovan had 4.7 wins above replacement. I'm going to acknowledge right now, Willi Castro is the worst hitter of this group. He's got some potential for power. And if you go look at his StatCast numbers, and we're going to look at his 2025 StatCast numbers in a second, he has some StatCast seasons that make you think there might be an approach issue, maybe a coaching issue. If you really believe in the Mariners coaching staff, maybe you could squeeze a little more juice out of Willi Castro as a hitter. But I think he's a perfect fit regardless of if he improves as a hitter. As a guy who is roughly a league average hitter. So the previous 2 years, 107 WRC plus. Last year, injury plagued, 92 WRC plus. Willing to accept 92 WRC plus as the floor for Willi Castro. And let's take a look at the profile real quick. He's got some problems. He's fast, and he's got good arm strength, and his range does not show up good in last year's stats. I will say that. If you look at his StatCast stats, his outs above average range, not great. We're going to talk more about his defense in a moment. Good base runner according to StatCast, and I think that carries over from year to year. I didn't include every single season. His launch angle to sweet spot percentage is strong, 72nd percentile. Everything else, batting profile looks kind of weak. Again, injury-plagued season. If you go back in earlier years in his career, some of the metrics look a little bit better, but they're not always great. Once again, acknowledging the worst hitter of this group, but also I'd like to point out the Mariners don't need offense. It's not their primary need anyway. The Mariners' primary need should be to improve their defense, and defense costs a lot less than offense. And they have some problems when you're talking about them replacing, or they're improving their defense, because you have Cal Raleigh, who is going to need some days at DH. You have Randy Arozarena, who should be a DH playing left field. You have JP Crawford, who, if you look at an earlier video of mine, also should be playing DH at this point in his career. should get some games at DH. I would like it if J.P. Crawford got games at DH this year. I would advocate for J.P. Crawford getting games at DH this year. You have Dominic Canzone. You have Luke Raley. You have guys. You have Rob Refsnyder. You have a lot of people slotted for DH at bats. So the Mariners need defense more than they need offense, is my point. They have very good hitters on the team. Their collective offense was very good. Some of that is propped up, of course, by Cal Raleigh having a historically good season. He's probably not going to hit 60 home runs again. I think we can all drop that expectation. He's probably not going to hit 60 home runs again, but they have a very good offense even outside of Cal Raleigh. The Mariners had, like I said, the league's third best offense and one of the worst defenses, especially among contending teams. And there were multiple times in the Tigers series and in the series against the Blue Jays where I would see balls that I was like, that is a ball that a good shortstop gets to, and J.P. Crawford isn't even close enough to make a diving attempt. They need to improve the defense, and they need to improve it at multiple positions. And ideally, you would get one of these guys who has some flexibility. Now, Marte has played some center field. Brendan Donovan plays all over the diamond. Let me show you who plays even more all over the diamond. Willi Castro has played in his 6 seasons. He has played more than 500 innings at second base, shortstop, left field, third base, right field, and third base. Each 500 or more innings each. He's been close to a league average player at the collective positions. He's been, according to these stats, he was an above average left fielder and a slightly below average center fielder, slightly below average right fielder. Some of these, they don't stabilize super quickly. He's about a league average fielder at 6 positions. So imagine the scenarios where this may be important. First off, you go into 2026. Let's say Willi Castro is your last acquisition. Hopefully not, but let's say that he is. He's your best starting third base option. You go into late game scenarios. This is not going to be popular in the clubhouse. He is a defensive replacement for J.P. Crawford. And I'll acknowledge one other thing. He hasn't been playing, he has not played these positions a ton every year. He plays where he's needed. He's moved around the diamond a bunch in his career. Better defensive shortstop statistically than J.P. Crawford at this point in their careers. It's his weakest position, but it's the hardest position in sports. He's also a switch hitter who has essentially even platoon splits over his career. He was actually a little better against lefties as a right-handed hitter last year. So natural platoon partner with JP if you decide to go down that road. Natural platoon partner with Cole Young if you decide to go down that road. Natural platoon partner with whoever if Victor Robles doesn't work out or you decide you want to go defense heavy on a day. Natural platoon partner with Dominic Canzone and with Luke Raley. And plays good defense or plays league average defense at 6 positions. But here's the thing about Willi Castro that makes him more valuable than any of these guys. And I should have brought this up earlier, frankly. Willi Castro's a free agent. Willi Castro is probably going to cost $5 million next year. The only estimate I was able to find on his salary was I think MLB trade rumors. Actually, let's see if that really bad NBC Sports predictions. Let's see if they have Castro on it. So they had Castro 69th, getting 1 year, $7 million. And I believe on the MLB trade rumors, he was the 50th ranked free agent. And they had him getting 2 years, $14 million. We're this late into free agency. He's ranked that low. I've always thought the NBC one was putting too much guaranteed money into those lower ranked players. I think that's kind of true of the MLB trade rumors one. I would be fine with $5 million for Willi Castro for 1 year. I would be fine with $12 million for 2 years. This is a guy that I think he's not Ben Zobrist. I'm not trying to sell Willi Castro as something more than he is. He's a good defender at a bunch of positions and an average hitter. He's exactly what the Mariners need. He improves them defensively right away. Ben Williamson's probably a better third baseman, but Willi Castro is a better overall option at third base. He is a better defensive shortstop than J.P. Crawford, a better defensive second baseman than Cole Young, and can hold his own in the outfield. Can easily, if Victor Robles gets hurt again. Frankly, if Julio Rodriguez gets hurt, that could be your replacement, your long-term replacement for him if there's a long-term injury to Julio Rodriguez in center field. Willi Castro covers you all across the diamond. And he's not a great hitter. But if the floor is 92 WRC plus and he has good defense everywhere, I will also say, let's go back and look at those the stats. He strikes out more than any of those other players. That's an indictment. Hand up, that's an indictment. 23.9% in the 2 years prior where he had better stats. 24.4% last year. Brendan Donovan is sitting at 13% and 13.1% respectively, and Ketel Marte was down to 14.9% last year after being 17.5% the years before that. He's the worst hitter of the bunch. I said that already. But you don't have to give up a top prospect. You don't have to trade out of your rotation. And he covers more defensive positions and better than those guys. Willi Castro should be a Mariner as soon as possible if he's willing to sign with the team.